More airlines have died in India's skies in the last 30 years than anywhere else. So why are the planes full while the profits crash? India is aviation's great paradox, a country where the skies stay full but the balance sheets stay empty. Because here, airlines don't fail in the sky, they fail on spreadsheets. Nowhere else have more than 20 major airlines gone bust since liberalization in the 1990s. Terminals overflow, aircraft orders break records, and yet the horizon is still lined with failed carriers. Every boom ends the same way. Another logo scraped off a jet, another promise grounded. So why does the world's fastest growing aviation market keep destroying its own airlines? Each year, India adds more new passengers than the entire population of the United Kingdom, yet almost every gain slips through foreign hands. Airlines once carried India's ambition to London, Singapore, and New York, before vanishing one by one. The routes remain, but the profits don't. Planes that once flew under Indian colours now feed Gulf hubs from Dubai to Doha. Each collapse handed a little more of India's sky to someone else. How is it even possible that a nation building record airports can lose global access year after year, while foreign carriers quietly poach its long-haul future? Air India is rebuilding under Tata and IndiGo dominates the market, yet the past keeps repeating. How did a glamorous airline launched by the owner of Kingfisher beer fall and fail so spectacularly? And only a few years later see Jet Airways, India's unofficial second flag carrier with direct routes around the world, vanish from the skies. Each failure starves the nation of connectivity and erodes global confidence in what should be one of the most vibrant markets on Earth. Today, a single drone strike in the Gulf can erase a quarter's profit, and a slide in the rupee can turn every leased jet into a loss. The cabins stay full, but the money drains away. The runways open, the demand is endless, and yet still India keeps losing altitude. India opened its skies and half the fleet disappeared out of them. It started as a patriotic dream. In 1948, Tata's Air India carried the flag abroad. 1953, the state took control. One logo, one rhythm, and one way to fly. For 40 years, predictability passed for progress. When airlines failed, passengers paid the price. Fewer routes, higher fares, and longer detours. In 1991, liberalization did what decades of bureaucracy hadn't. It let competition fly. Within 3 years, private names filled the timetables. Jet Airways, East West, and Damania, a half dozen hopefuls that rose and vanished just as quickly. Most lasted barely long enough to print the safety cards. And for the first time, ordinary travelers booked seats once reserved for diplomats. The mood was electric until the bills arrived. Within a decade of deregulation, 10 private airlines had already gone under. Two kinds of airlines took off. Some were small domestic challengers based in underserved regional cities, flying short hops on tight budgets. Others aimed far higher. Premium carriers built to rival the fading Air India and to connect India directly to London, Singapore, and New York, with the comfort that passengers had long left home to find. Both promised a new era. Neither had a system ready to keep them alive. Profits evaporated faster than fuel. East West's founder was murdered before his airline even found altitude. Damania's cash ran out. A handful of regional upstarts simply parked their jets, engines cold and debts loud. The first lesson came early. India could open a market overnight and close it just as fast. Cabin crews began pooling salaries just to afford fuel. So when Jet Airways finally collapsed years later, its aircraft didn't stop flying. Many were leased out to Thai Airways and Turkish Airlines. A sad story for what had once been India's most premium international carrier. Its best jets once carried the tricolour abroad, and now they earn profit for foreign airlines taking over India's long-haul passengers. India kept proving that it could build airlines, but just not keep them alive. So why did no one stop it? A new generation tried again. Jet Airways became the reliable gentleman, Kingfisher the showman with champagne at 35,000 feet. For a moment, it felt like India had finally cracked it. Reviews glowed and balance sheets bled. Luxury bought applause, but not profit. Kingfisher collapsed in 2012. Jet Airways followed in 2019. Jet's founder Naresh Goyal was the opposite of Kingfisher's Playboy liquor heir, Vijay Mallya, discreet, disciplined, and far more cautious. Yet both ended at the same gate. Both collapses left the same scenes behind: unpaid crews, grounded fleets, and passengers stranded at terminals once meant to symbolize India's new confidence in the world. Each bankruptcy had a real effect. Thousands of staff went months without pay. Many still expected to keep working, while passengers stopped booking seats on failing airlines, afraid that their money would vanish along with the next cancelled flight. I only ever flew Jet Airways in Spirit, aboard the same aircraft it once proudly commissioned, now flying under those who profited from its fall. Staying aloft cost more money every second. The field was tilted from the start. Air India drew on the state while rivals drowned in paperwork. Taxes made jet fuel cost more than in Singapore, one of the world's cheapest aviation hubs, and every kilo of fuel burned came with a surcharge of bureaucracy. By now, the pattern was obvious, but no one stopped it. Since the mid-1990s, more than 20 Indian airlines have shut down. By 2005, 5 of the previous 8 private airlines launched since liberalization had already failed. One carrier, though, broke the script. IndiGo grew faster than any airline in Indian history, from its first flight in 2006 to commanding more than half of the domestic market within 15 years. They built a network designed for the budget end of the market, moving millions exactly where they needed to go for the prices that they could afford. No frills, no business class, just reliable short-haul flights linking the cities that mattered. While others chased luxury, IndiGo made volume its advantage. A clean, reliable bus in the sky. But even discipline bends. Cheap fares fill planes but wipe out profit. Every full flight still loses money. Fuel stays high, taxes bite, currency slips, and every decision shrinks to cutting the next cost. The question changed from who flies next to how long before the next one fails. People never knew how long an airline would last, so they put their hope in well-funded foreign carriers, even if it meant another stop or two. For decades, the cycle repeated: growth, collapse, recovery, collapse again, each time leaving a little less faith in the system. The history is clear. The problem isn't. How can planes stay full, airports busier than ever, and the industry still lose money year after year? It began as a bargain, cheap tickets, full planes, and ended as a bloodbath. Seats sold for less than a train ticket, and 1 rupee offers turned the taxi into the expensive leg. Government fare caps kept prices popular and balance sheets hostile. For passengers, it looked like progress. Cleaner planes, cheaper fares, busier terminals. Families even queued for selfies in new terminals built on debt, proud to be part of a country finally taking flight, until the reality of the bills arrived. One route proves the illusion. Delhi to Mumbai spans more than 1,000 kilometers, yet often sells for about $70, a loss on every seat. By 2023, unit costs exceeded yields on almost every trunk route, and flights of the same length in the United States cost roughly 3 times more, and even there, airlines struggle. Carriers tried to outgrow losses by adding routes instead of revenue. Expansion looked like a way out, but became a trap. Kingfisher bought a budget rival for scale and fused 2 loss makers into one slow crash. Jet Airways ordered wide bodies for long-haul glory and hauled debt instead. Full service promised champagne up front and bargains down back, and then delivered a balance sheet that pleased no one. Costs soon raced ahead of revenue. Oil spiked in 2008, and jet fuel became the largest expense, with state taxes nearly 30%. Paying it felt like being charged for breathing. But what happens when breathing itself becomes unaffordable? One bad month on oil could erase a year's profit, and every spike in Brent meant another night of route cutting at headquarters. The rupee slid, and leases, maintenance, and insurance, all billed in dollars, grew heavier without any new aircraft leaving the gate. Ground crews joked that fuel was the only thing priced above their salaries. In 2022, Indian Airlines lost roughly $1.5 billion while traffic set records. A packed restaurant was losing money on every plate. Pressure built inside the walls. Routes multiplied and debt steepened. Investors were pacified with growth charts. The industry stopped competing and started cannibalizing, and the system bled itself dry. If this is what airlines did to themselves, what happens when global shocks and policy design join the fight? The first shock came from outside India, when crude oil jumped from around $40 to $120 a barrel between 2020 and 2022. Planners worked through the night, cutting routes and slowing expansion just to save fuel. Each time the rupee slipped, nearly 20% against the dollar in the same period, lease, maintenance, and insurance payments all rose immediately. Roughly 2/3 of an Indian airline's costs are paid in foreign currency, so every slide of the rupee hit before the plane even left the ground. For the first time, the crisis wasn't homegrown. It arrived at the price of fuel. Oil decides who flies and who falls. India imports most of its fuel, so every flare-up in the Gulf or OPEC vote lands at the ticket counter. A homegrown boom still runs on fuel priced by foreign politics, and when oil rises, the rupee weakens, turning every lease and insurance bill into a dollar problem. Then comes the ground game. New Delhi is practically begging states to slash fuel taxes and wooing foreign investors. Discipline on paper, but chaos in practice. Kingfisher discovered that rule. Jet Airways repeated it. The state cushioned its own flag carrier for years, then sold it in 2022 and called the shift reform. Today, New Delhi urges states to trim fuel taxes and courts foreign capital. The message moved from protection to discipline, yet the rules still feel uneven. Abroad, the squeeze is worse. The Gulf superconnectors skim India's long-haul demand with scale and subsidized seamless hubs. They sell the world in one stop, while Indian carriers juggle the costs, uneven bilateral rights, and inconsistent fuel taxation. Premium traffic leaves through another terminal, while domestic players fight on price and watch the cream skim away abroad. For 30 years, the Gulf hubs have turned India's geography into their business model. From Dubai, Doha, and Abu Dhabi, 3 carriers built the network that India never did. Emirates, Qatar Airways, and Etihad made Middle East the subcontinent's official gateway, moving everyone from migrant workers to millionaires to places no Indian airline reached. By 2023, they carried over 40% of all passengers leaving India. Half of India's international flyers now connect through foreign hubs. India built the passengers and the Gulf built the profits. So how did India's own airlines miss half of their market? Every reform at home has met an empire already built on Indian travelers. They didn't just fill a gap, they defined the standard. Flatbeds, punctual schedules, and global reach became normal, while India's carriers fought the bottom of the market. Premium travelers went where the comfort was. Everyone else went where the connections worked. The profit pool migrated west. Around 70% of India-origin long-haul revenue now sits with foreign airlines, leaving Indian carriers to fight for the cheapest fares in their own backyard. At what point did India stop owning its own passengers? Analysts project that by late 2025, nearly 70% of India's airline seats will belong to low-cost carriers. It looks like progress until you try flying anywhere far. From Delhi, you can choose a dozen budget airlines before breakfast, but few long hauls in Indian colors. In a nation of more than 1.3 billion people that's developing fast, that focus on low-cost frequency makes sense, but it also shows how small India still thinks on a global scale. For 3 decades, the stopover became India's most reliable export, and the Gulf took the passengers, the profits, and the prestige, and now sells them back at a markup. And honestly, if I were in India, I wouldn't be rushing to buy an Air India ticket either. The only question left is whether anyone in Delhi still wants the job back. May 2023, 7,000 employees of Go First woke up to find their airline had vanished overnight. More than 1,500 flights were cancelled and tens of thousands of travelers were stranded mid-journey, all while debts climbed beyond $800 million. And the bankruptcies didn't end there. A decade after Kingfisher's fall, another carrier folded under almost identical pressures. Go First had begun in 2005 as a small, no-frills airline owned by the century-old Wadia Group, one of India's oldest business families. For years, it survived the fare wars that killed others, flying quietly along IndiGo in the budget market. But by 2023, its engines were failing faster than its balance sheet could recover. A global shortage of Pratt & Whitney turbines, the engines powering most of its Airbus fleet, left dozens of jets grounded, and revenues collapsed and the creditors closed in. Within days of the collapse, more than 1,500 flights had disappeared from the schedule and tens of thousands of travelers were stranded mid-journey. A decade earlier, Kingfisher collapsed the same way. Locked gates, unpaid wages, and grounded jets under the summer sun. Every collapse traps thousands in the same holding pattern. Cabin crews and engineers scatter abroad for steady pay. Passengers chase refunds that rarely appear. Lessors fight for aircraft trapped on tarmacs, their paint fading faster than the paperwork. Rows of white-tailed jets baked in the heat worth millions, earning nothing. More than 50 Go First A320 passenger jets sat idle for months while lawyers argued over ownership. Each silent day cost another fortune. The financial drain runs deep. Every bankruptcy leaves behind unpaid fuel bills, airport dues, and defaulted leases, money that could have bought the next generation of aircraft. By 2023, India's aviation debt pile was approaching $12 billion, a figure that keeps climbing because the same mistakes keep repeating themselves. The state shoulders most of it. Airports lose revenue, oil firms absorb defaults, while banks write off loans. There's no safety net. When an airline fails in Europe, passengers get compensation. In India, they get a press statement. The reputational damage lasts longer than the debt. Each shutdown chips away at confidence that an Indian carrier can actually even survive more than a few seasons. Pilots head to the Gulf, engineers to Singapore, cabin crew to whoever pays on time. Investors hesitate. Even travelers wait a year before trusting a new airline with their credit card. That distrust feeds the next collapse. When belief goes, funding dries up. And when funding dries up, belief goes further. It's a loop Indian aviation hasn't broken in a generation. Then comes the trust problem. Every closure chips away at faith that a domestic carrier can last more than a few seasons. Investors hesitate and financiers raise rates. So when Tata and IndiGo began rebuilding, their first task wasn't technical at all. It was psychological. Before they could restore routes, they had to restore faith, because the next takeoff won't just test engines or strategy. It will test whether India still has the faith its own airlines can stay in the air. India may have finally learned to fly if it can resist repeating itself. After decades of turbulence, the numbers finally point upwards. In 2022, the Tata Group retook Air India, inheriting a tired fleet, patchwork systems, and a reputation in free fall. The response was immediate. Merge its brands, refresh the cabins, rebuild operations, and place one of the largest aircraft orders on record. Part of that transformation came through Vistara, the joint venture between Tata and Singapore Airlines that folded into Air India in 2024. It's almost poetic that a foreign carrier, famed for its rulebook precision and obsession with detail, is now seen as the cure for what decades of nationalization and political favoritism did to India's own flag carrier. Maybe that's what it takes, importing discipline to rebuild what ambition and nepotism eroded. Air India now fields its gleaming A350s, jets originally built for Aeroflot, now flying with business suites that close like capsules. They're a night and day change from the aging 777s still running to the United States, where frayed upholstery and jammed seats remain the norm. Soon it will take delivery of more A350s with new cabins throughout, signaling an airline reaching for parity with Singapore Airlines rather than nostalgia. But transformation is uneven. The A350s are few and the 777s dominate. Those older cabins are beyond cosmetic repair. Whole aircraft bled of service until they break, with passengers left to bear it until replacements arrived. Tata and Singapore Airlines have promised a world-class feat, yet maintenance still carries the reflexes of state ownership. Marketing shows rebirth, but daily operations show the past refusing to retire. Behind the press releases, the cabin tells the truth. First-class hardware that collapses mid-flight, business-class seats with broken tray tables on some of the airline's longest routes, decade-old entertainment screens flickering between static and nostalgia, passengers describing a museum of failures, power sockets dead, recliners jammed, blankets that remember previous flights. Cleanliness remains inconsistent. Headlines about bed bugs in premium cabins still circulate. On some US-bound services, travelers even asked to sign waivers acknowledging broken seats for the entire journey. The frustration isn't glamour denied, it's competence withheld. When a flagship sells first and delivers fatigue, it erodes faith faster than any budget carrier could. So while new A350s glide across social media, crews on aging 777s fight hardware older than many of their passengers. A culture with no eye for detail still clings to the controls. And yet, even with gleaming new jets, some of the old habits are in the cockpit. The challenge runs deeper than image. India wants a global standard flag carrier, but some of the most basic services still misfire. Cleanliness, reliability, and functionality. Until those habits change, until faith is restored inside the cabin as much as outside it, the Middle Eastern giants will keep carrying the lion's share of subcontinental traffic. Passengers seeking comfort will keep changing planes in Doha, Dubai, or Abu Dhabi, while Air India sells the future from aircraft that still whisper the past. When I fly to India, I still take Air France or British Airways, which says a lot, especially when you consider one of those airlines. Not because I want to, but because there isn't yet an Indian carrier that I can trust to match them. And that's what I want to change. A country with a cultural and culinary history rich deserves an airline capable of showing it to the world. But Air India isn't there yet. Across the apron, IndiGo follows the opposite playbook. Cost discipline first, glamour later. To protect valuable slots before its own A350s arrived, it wet-leased North Atlantic 787s fitted only with premium and economy cabins. Serviceable but substandard on routes competing with Gulf and European carriers. On the new Delhi and Mumbai-Athens routes, about 7 hours each way, IndiGo will operate A321 XLRs with only recliner seats up front. Its partner, Aegean Airlines, will fly the same aircraft type but with lie-flat beds inherited from JetBlue. The contrast is sharp. IndiGo positions itself at the sensible end of what should be a premium corridor. And with new aircraft capped at recliners as their most premium product, it raises the question, can IndiGo ever compete globally, or is it choosing to stay safe in the middle? Pragmatic maybe, but it keeps the airline defined by restraint, not reach. Air India's revival faces the opposite problem. It already sells polish but struggles with reliability. IndiGo nails reliability but avoids polish. One airline offers image without depth and the other discipline without ambition. Both are running towards the same future from different directions. The symbolism is potent. One refurbishes its image and the other expands its reach. Between them lies a story of a market learning to grow up. India's airlines now command the largest combined order book on earth. Hundreds of A320s, A321s, 787s and A350s. New routes knit continents, yet cabins promise parity with the best. Yet the challenge remains the same. Hardware can be delivered by Airbus or Boeing, but discipline must come from within. And honestly, after watching decades of the same cycle, you can't help but want this one to hold. India's flying higher than ever, which, given the record, is exactly when you start to worry. India doesn't suffer from a shortage of airlines. It suffers from a shortage of accountability. For 30 years, every collapse has been somebody else's fault. Oil prices, taxes, the rupee, the weather, anyone but the people running the system. Meanwhile, the Gulf built empires on India's passengers. The West flies them in comfort, and India? It's still trying to build an airline that believes in itself. Because until that happens, the world will keep selling India its own sky at a markup. The sky never lies. It just waits to see who learns from the crash. For the Sky Digest, I'm Jan, where Air India's first class still includes cockroaches, at least until the new A350s are delivered. Cheers.